Good evening. I wanted to talk about two things tonight. I wanted to talk about an Old Testament character that I think we don't look at enough. I think he's a famous character, but we just don't look at it. I think we can draw some lessons from it. And I think one of the reasons we want to do that, Romans 15:4 reads, "For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope." So we do want to have hope through the Scriptures, and we want to learn from all of the Old Testament. Of course, the Bible, the Old Testament points to Jesus, and the New Testament, other than the four Gospels, points back to Jesus. Jesus is the main focus of it, for sure, of the Bible. But before I get into that, I wanted to be thankful for our teachers. They're a special breed of people. Thank you for those that teach school and formal educations, those that teach our Bible classes, both adult and young people. And we just saw this afternoon they had a Bible bowl, and these young people went through it and did great on all their answers. Sandra and I sat there, and we were answering the questions along with them. And I think we got a solid B. I would say that we did okay, but they did great, and I'm so proud of them and all the teachers. But one of my favorite teachers in the formal education anyway was a lady named Anna Prater. And I know you can go back in your own mind's eye thinking about your own favorite teacher. And I don't know that Miss Prater was really my favorite teacher, but she was one of my most influential teachers. And what Miss Prater did, and by the way, Miss Prater, I was a young teenager when I had Miss Prater's class. It was English literature, and you know, I was a guy. I liked to go out and ride my bike and play sports, and I didn't mind the classes so much, but I didn't really have time for homework or reading and that kind of stuff. But what she did, and I'll always thank her for it because she gave me a love for reading, she couched it as an adventure. She didn't say, "This is classic literature, you've got to read it." She didn't do that. She said, "Hey guys, this is an adventure. This is going to be about a war and some great warriors, and then there's going to be a great adventure on getting back to where they came from." And it turned out to be Homer's Iliad, the Trojan War, and the Odyssey, Odysseus going back to Greece. So we read it. I loved it because it was so interesting. And that's the way the Bible is. The Bible is classic literature, and we've got so many interesting stories. And thankful for all the teachers over the years. That's been the hallmark of this congregation. We have had great teachers that put it in context, that make us feel like we were there. And it's so interesting to read the stories of the Old Testament. But I wanted to go, the Bible character I wanted to look at for us, but again, thank you for all our teachers now, all the teachers of the Bible classes in the past. Thank you so much for all your work and all your efforts. But I wanted to look, the Old Testament character I wanted to look at is Saul, King Saul, the first king of Israel. And I know we're aware of his tragic end where he falls on his own sword, but how did he get there? He started out as a good guy, a great guy, and our text is going to be generally in 1 Samuel 9 and beyond. But basically, just a little context for this, Samuel was the prophet. He appointed his two sons to be judges. This was the transition period between the judges and the kings. He appointed his two sons, but his sons were awful. They took bribes. They perverted justice. And the people came to Samuel and said, "Hey, we don't want this at all. Not at all. We need a king. And we need a king so we can be like everybody else. Everybody else is doing it. Why can't we have a king?" And Samuel was upset, but God said, "Look, Samuel, don't be upset. They haven't rejected you. They've rejected me. They want a king, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to warn them, and as in everything in life, there's pluses, but there's minuses." He said, we can give you a king, but you tell them that this king is going to take your sons and conscript them into the army, and they're going to fight and die. Your daughters are going to become maidens and servants and cooks and so forth in the service. They're going to take your best lands, your best vineyards, and take 10%. You're going to have to pay a big price for this king. But they insisted. So Samuel did. So as God would have it, there was a man, the son of Kish. His name was Saul. And I think he started out as a great man. You can, 1 Samuel 9, verse 2. And it said Kish, and they're talking about Kish, and he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man and handsome. And there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person. I don't know exactly what it says in other translations, but I don't know if anybody could say anything better than you're a goodlier person than any other person around. And from his shoulders upward, he was higher than any of the people. So he was head and shoulders taller. He was like those great warriors of Homer, of Achilles and Ajax, those kind of warriors. And it was an interesting, this is a very interesting story. But he went out, his father had lost the donkeys, and he sent his son, Saul, to go look for them. He said, go out and find the donkeys. Couldn't find them. As, of course, providence would have it, he goes to Saul to find his way back. What's going on? So Saul appoints him. He said, why are you talking to me like this? I'm a Benjamite. He said, I'm of the tribe of Benjamin, and we're a really small tribe, and why are you making me important and be the captain and the king over Israel? And he said, well, that's the way God wants it. They anointed him. Many of the people there, when he was anointed, said, God save the king, but there were others, and there's always naysayers. They said, oh my goodness, what can this guy do for us? He can't lead us. There's no way. And so then everybody goes back to their own homes. And Saul as well. He goes back to Kish, and he's working in the field. But so as providence would have it, Nahash of the Ammonites goes up against Jabesh-Gilead, surrounds it, and says, hey, we got you surrounded. You're going to have to give up. And the king there at Jabesh-Gilead said, or I guess the mayor, I'm not sure he was a king, but he said, okay, we'll be your servants. But, Nahash said, okay, well, there's just one other little thing. Come out to us, and we're going to put out every one of your right eye in addition to being our servants. They said, let's think about that. Give us 7 days. So they sent back a message. They got it to Saul. Saul, the Spirit of God came upon. He was wroth. He said, oh, my goodness. He said, so he cuts up a yoke of oxen, which I understand is 2, sends it out to the tribes of Israel and Judah. And he said, come and fight with us and save Jabesh-Gilead, or this will happen to your own oxen. And so sure enough, there were 300,000 Israelites that showed up and 30,000 from the tribe of Judah. They went and defeated Jabesh, and all the people rejoiced. And then when they did defeat him, they said, where are the naysayers that said Saul won't be king? Bring them to us and we'll kill him. He said, no, this is a time to rejoice. But then things kind of started turning south for Saul. He started thinking more of himself as being king. He was a king for a year or two, and he can fall in. And here's the thing, the lessons we need to learn from Saul. First of all, he became impatient. He was not a patient man, and sometimes we can lose our patience with God. We don't trust God. They were being pressed by the Philistines that still had them under their yoke, and he said, we want to. His son, Jonathan, I'll be right with you. Jonathan said, he attacked the Philistines. The Philistines said they came to him and they were going to attack them. The Philistines were, they said, numbered as the sand. So there was no number for them. They had so many people. But Samuel said, wait and I'll come and I'll make the sacrifice for you. He did not wait. He made the sacrifice on that day. Evidently, he did it too early. And as soon as he had made the sacrifice, Samuel showed up. He said, what have you done? You've disobeyed God, he said. He said, okay, but anyway, a great victory was given to him, And they continued on. The next one was, we need to watch out for rationalizing our own actions. It's easy for us to say, well, God wouldn't mind me doing that. Does he really want me to follow that closely to what he's saying? I think I'll be okay. I'm a really pretty good person. So we rationalize our own actions. And that's what happened with Saul when he was told to kill King Agag and all the Amalekites. That sounds pretty harsh, but there was a reason for it. But he said, destroy it all. Destroy men and women, destroy the cattle, the oxen. But that didn't happen. As he was coming back to meet Samuel from the victory over the Amalekites, there was a lot of cattle, a lot of oxen, and they had King Agag with him. And Samuel said, what have you done? You haven't obeyed the voice of God. And he said, oh, yeah, I have. He said, I destroyed him. He said, well, what is all this mooing and bleating in my ears? All this, he said, the cattle and the oxen. Well, I brought him back to sacrifice to God, of course. That's why I brought him back. That's why I didn't obey. And then he said, well, look, it's better to obey than to sacrifice. And David says that in one of his Psalms, and it's true. We need to obey rather than sacrifice. But then he said, and we've got to watch this one too, he blamed others. We can't blame others for our problems. It's those hypocrites up there at the church that keeps me away. That's why I don't go. They're sinners. Well, sure we are, but we're forgiven. And we're trying the best we can to serve God. But he said, the people told me to fall on the spoil and bring the cattle back and the best of everything. So Saul blamed others. Obviously, that was not needed to do. And then he became jealous and envious. And that is a big one for all of us to learn from. David he loved David when he saw him, when he killed Goliath. But then he was a great warrior for Saul. But then the little maidens had a song that they sang. They said, Saul has killed his thousands, David has killed his 10,000s. And he hated it. He was jealous. He was envious. And it said right after that, he said, from that moment forward, he eyed David. And what that means was he looked to kill David because he was jealous and envious. And then lastly is pride. And I'm not sure exactly where it says, but God regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. And he said, it was so much better when you didn't think so much of yourself. And sometimes we can be thinking too much of ourselves. Pride goes before a fall. So let's learn the lesson. Let's be patient and let's wait on and trust God. Let's don't rationalize our own actions. Let's just obey rather than sacrifice. Let's don't blame others for our issues. Let's don't be jealous or envious of others, what others have. Let's be content with what we have, and let's do not be a proud people. If you have a need at this time that you need to be baptized into Christ and rise to walk in a new life, or you need the prayers of the church at this time, please come forward as we sing.